verb. You know, I just spent Sunday afternoon with the Dalai Lama, who's the spiritual leader of the Tibetan folks. He's probably maybe even more recognized or famous than the Pope in the world. Everybody knows who he is. And so it was a thrill to speak on the same stage with him and to meet him and to shake his hand and sort of scratch that off my bucket list. But he famously has said before, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. The interesting thing about that is he doesn't say be compassionate. He says practice it, which is kind of an odd word to use. You know, practice makes perfect. You know, he practices medicine. You know, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You know, practice, practice, practice. You know. It's a weird word, you know. Even afterwards, somebody came up to me and I was dressed like this. They said, "Are you a practicing priest?" And I said, "Yeah, you know, I'm going to keep practicing until I get it right." You know, she didn't laugh either. So, so practice is a weird thing. Practice is about making something habitual. You know, so I watched a documentary the other day on Jeremy Lin, the basketball. It's called Linsanity, and they have old footage of him as a kid. And so when he wasn't in school or he wasn't asleep, he was playing basketball. This kid just played basketball all day long, and it becomes habitual. That's the point of practice. It's not practice makes perfect. Practice makes habitual. It becomes a habit, and suddenly, if you want to make others happy, practice compassion. If you want to make yourself happy, you practice compassion. I remember once I had just said Mass at Nellis Youth Authority. It doesn't exist anymore, but I was walking to my car in the parking lot, and the sun was setting, and all of a sudden this voice, this young guy yelling at me through a window with bars on it, he says, "Drive safe, G." Like that. And I knew instantly how that guy felt in saying that. He felt good. He felt happy. That once you kind of do an other-centered thing, if you cherish the other, if you somehow leave the place where you're stuck in your own self-absorption, if somehow you allow yourself to ventilate the worry and the terror and the sorrow, that's what that kid did. By kind of being other-centered, suddenly it all kind of worked out okay. And that's what you hope to do. I remember once I was at the Youth Authority in Norwalk, which also doesn't exist, but they had a unit called Drake. And Drake was a place at the time anywhere where they kept away all these really young kids who had done really serious crimes while they were fighting the case. And so we'd have Mass on Sunday afternoon, and there'd be about 30 of them in this day room. And there was this one kid, Louis, who was kind of goofy and kind of a slow poke, but he always paid attention to me, and he always sat in the last row. And so after the homily, I do the petitions, you know, and I kind of try to model it for them. And I said, well, let's offer our prayers to God. For you guys, that you will grow in the path to see yourselves as God does, and et cetera, et cetera. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, hear our prayer. And then I say, you know, for your family, so that they be safe and they know how much you love them, let us pray to the Lord. And Lord, hear our prayer. And then finally, I'd say for your communities where you will return after you leave here, that they be safe places and places of peace, and you be ambassadors of that peace. Let us pray to the Lord. So like that. So I'm modeling for them how to do the prayer. And then I say, no, and I open it up for your prayers. And there's silence until Louis in the back row goes, "You!" That's all he said. Everybody looks at him and, "Let us pray to the Lord," he said. And everybody said, "Lord, hear our prayer." Well, afterwards I cornered him and I said, "Louis, I gotta tell you, when you prayed for me today, oh my God, I felt so good." He bursts into tears. He just begins to sob. I have to wait for him. And I put my arm around him. When he finally can speak, he said, "And when I say that prayer for you, that shit made me feel good." If you want to make others happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Compassion is a verb. You got to practice it every day. So let's try to do that.